Hey listeners, we're nearing the end of our 15th anniversary fundraising campaign, and we need your help to meet our goal. This campaign offers you a chance to win a unique food and music experience in one of the most exciting cities in America. Here's how it works. Donate to HRN and you'll be entered to win dinner for two and 2 tickets to a concert in one of 8 amazing cities: New York, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Nashville, Las Vegas, Charleston, Ardmore, Pennsylvania, and Asheville. All donations support our work educating food system storytellers. And when you donate, you can choose one of those cities and you'll be entered to win dinner and 2 tickets to a show. So help us reach our goal and enter to win dinner and a show in the city of your choice. Check out heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. That's heritageradionetwork.org/15. Thank you.
Today's program was brought to you by Emmy Cheese, makers of specialty cheese from Switzerland, crafted with heart and passion. For more information, visit emmyusa.com. That's EMMIUSA.com.
Welcome to the Grape Nation, your weekly wine journey. Our guest is David Choi. We'll talk to David about wine and TikTok. We'll taste a Magna Carta Red from Napa for our weekly wine sip. I'm your host, Sam Ben-Ruby. Stay with us for the Grape Nation on the Heritage Radio Network. We bring wine to the people. Though born in LA, David Choi grew up in DC and eventually set roots again, literally in California. David is proprietor at Magna Carta Cellars and Angel Falls Wines. He came through the ranks in wine retail, import, and distribution before making his own wines. Savvy in social media, David found his way onto TikTok and has now become one of the early wine sensations on the platform with Wine with David. Welcome to the Grape Nation, David.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
David, we're talking to you remotely via Zencaster. Where are you physically right now?
Right now, I'm on the East Coast. I'm in DC right now.
Okay, which is an important part of your life and your past and your present.
Yep.
All right. So, David, to give our listeners a little context, give me a brief timeline, a brief background on your journey in life and wine that got you to Magna Carta, to Angel Falls, and, now TikTok.
Sure. So the history of wine really begins, I guess, around in '09, middle of late '09. I got an opportunity to be in a retail store, and, really had a decade run there. But during that time, I, moved forward into looking into more import distribution at that time, just because in DC, I was able to go direct with a lot of wineries that weren't being represented there. And I was there for a couple of years, but during that time, I had already had my eyes open about producing my own wine. So it was sort of in the works the whole time. It was just,
Right.
as you know, it's a slow build having your own
Right.
winery.
Right.
You can't just produce a wine and get it out. It takes years, before it actually gets released. So I had to have the plans for it, to go through that. And then from there, I would say about, a year and a half ago, it was really in New York. I was shooting some content with some food influencers on their YouTube channel. And I took them into Astor Wines and, really, I saw how they were just, so confused, for even someone as experienced as they are in social media. And really at that time, a light bulb went off and I said, there's a gap between, generations right now and, wine drinkers, and really wanted to, really get into that and break it down for them, without having it all go over their heads.
Wait, when did you say that was? A couple of years ago?
Yeah, this was this was a year ago.
Okay.
When I was there in New York, it was January. It was January, last year.
All right. So good timeline. That sets up everything. Let me ask you a few questions.
Sure.
Before '09, the retail store, I mean, were you tooling around? What were you doing?
So my real wine journey really begins, when I was probably 14, 15. I mean, really, that's when I, first was introduced to wine. Maybe a little bit younger, but that's my first memories of it. Really was around family.
Okay.
We came from humble beginnings. We weren't drinking wine with, dinners or things like that. It was more so of like family gatherings, friends gatherings, celebrations like birthday parties, or going to a steakhouse. We would always order wine, and generally it was always a Bordeaux. And so for me, you know, you know, even I didn't know it then, right? But my family was like, Bordeaux's the best wine. It's just the West, they make the best,
So you cut your
big
teeth.
reds.
You cut your teeth, and your exposure was Bordeaux, and almost in a way like champagne. It was like a celebratory thing, right? Like for a big meal or when you went out. You
Yeah,
cut
yeah,
this. Yeah.
exactly. It was so for me, wine brought memories and those experiences of bringing people together, right? Like that's what wine meant to me,
Man,
right?
that's what it's all about. You know.
Exactly.
All right,
Yeah.
so um, we'll get to the a little down the road. I want to get to that trip into Astor that kind of launched a lot of stuff. But first, I want to talk to you, about your wineries because I know you're very consumed with them. Um, I think you mentioned when you realized you wanted to make wine, but why? You sit there and go, gee, I've worked the whole thing, and I'll try to make wine. So why? I mean, like every sommelier, every retailer, every distributor? I mean, is it their goal to make wine? Why did you want to do it?
So, being in retail, it was funny. Being in retail, I learned, how to sell wine, and I knew the feedback and data of what consumers wanted, right? Just on a personal level, just asking them questions and getting to know them, building relationships, and seeing where their palettes were. Um, that
You were
first
paying
year,
attention.
I was doing my work. I
Yeah.
wanted to learn, and it's all part of it. Any industry, anything you do, you want to get better at.
Right.
And so the first, I think it was about first 8 months I was at Pearson's. Um, Jorge Ordonez, came to me and invited me on his death march to Spain for 10 days. And which was like for me a great opportunity. I was new. In wine, but he brought me along. And
Was
when I
that your
went,
first like wine market trip?
yes, that was the
Why do you
first one I
think?
went.
Why do you think he picked this young, nerdy neophyte wine guy?
I have no idea, but from
Okay, fair
I have
answer.
no idea. But I think he saw the potential, and it was also the distributor at that time saw the potential of myself, and how the potential of like what I can do for wine. I guess I was really
Hmm.
eager in learning. I was tasting everything. I wanted to learn everything you could know about wine, and he brought me along on that trip and really opened my eyes up to the art of wine, from the ground up, really, right?
So your first trip resonated with you.
It meant everything at that,
Oh,
it really did. It showed me everything that I wanted. I wasn't a poet, I
right.
wasn't a lyricist or a singer, I didn't, but I always had a passion for the art, and at that time, I was starting to learn. I had a pretty good palate, you know, and just seeing that, I said, it really hit me, and I said, this is my art. I think I can do something like this. But at that time, I had no idea how to do any of
Yeah,
it.
I mean that was incredibly early on. So that market trip right out of the chute had an incredible, impact on what you do. So let's jump ahead because we talked about your timeline a little. How does Magna Carta come about? we know early on that this is something you want to do. Time goes by, you get yourself a lot of experience. How do you start putting a winery, and then, I don't mean a winery, the facility, but the idea of making wines and the brand of Magna Carta together?
Yeah, I was spending a lot of time at Bordeaux for a couple of years, just learning, working with different, chateaus and just seeing their process of grape growing, meeting the winemakers, just seeing all the technical aspects of what they were doing. Um, and I really wanted to bring a lot of the old world into the new world, and bring that in. And there was no better place than to do it in Napa.
Right.
Consistent weather,
A
it's
lot of
always
parallels. Right.
yeah, high quality, high quality grapes, and it was just some that was there. And at the time, I'd really, um, you know, grown a relationship with Peter Heitz of Turnbull, and we became really good friends. And I
Was
went.
that relationship through previous business and all of that?
It was he came to the store. He
Right.
was doing market trips into DC. I mean, he rarely does it, but he
Right.
did it on like one occasion, and then we met, and he actually ended up we ended up going to dinner. One of the distributor managers actually ended up breaking his thumb by slamming the car door on his head. So it was a memorable
Ouch. Right. You'll
trip
always
for
remember
him.
that.
Yeah, but you know,
So Peter is
yeah.
from the Heights Martha's Vineyard family, right? A descendant?
He is not. He is
He's
not
not.
part
He's
of
a different
that.
one?
He is. He is. I
Ah,
guess
my
there's a
bad.
few heights, but
Okay.
he is. But he was born in the vineyards,
Right. No,
But
he
he
has
was.
a good background. I know that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously,
So
being.
Peter's in DC,
Mhm.
and you have dinner with him, and somebody slams a car door on somebody's thumb. What happens? You and him start plotting about, hey, let's make wine?
Uh, I I brought the idea up to him, right?
Okay.
I was like, I'm really interested, in producing wine, a Bordeaux blend from Napa, a left bank, cab based, Bordeaux wine. And, he said, sure, come out, let's go take a look at some vineyards, and for me, I was very inexperienced, I would say. I was young. I was
Right.
like, I just want, I want Beckstoffer, you know,
Right.
like,
Right.
you just go for the name.
Tokalan or whatever. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And so we went out there, we saw the different vineyards, and we went by Beckstoffer, and he said, we can get Beckstoffer fruit, but know that you're getting the last row, right? It's
Right.
like the road next to the gravel roads, and
Last guy
there's a
in. Right.
reason that the Schraders and the guys haven't picked it up,
Right.
right? And
Right.
he said one thing that was really telling, and that's what we do today. He said, "Do you want to make, do you want to be a marketing wine company, or do you want to make real wine? You want to be a real winery." Just meaning that, I could have put Beckstoffer on it. It may not have been the highest quality, but it's still Beckstoffer, right? Or work
Wait,
with
the
smaller vineyards.
Beckstoffer asked you that? They
No,
said,
no,
do you
no.
want it?
Peter said that.
Okay.
Peter said that.
Right. Yeah. It makes
Peter
sense
said
that
that.
he said it. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Peter said that. And is it? Do you want to work with, some of these smaller vineyards that the fruit is just beautiful, and you're making real wine. It's. And I said, and I made that choice right at that time. I said it'd been great, and maybe down the line we'll do something like that. But
Right.
we produce one wine right now at Magna Carta, our proprietary blend. We're looking
Right.
at other vineyards right now.
So you
On
contract grapes,
Yes.
and you get grapes from various sites, where you said Peter helps you identify around the Napa area, right?
Yeah, I mean, all over. We're in Carneros, Stag's Leap. Primarily, our cab is all Oakville, and
So
then
good, very good hybrid. Let me ask you this. I mean, I ask virtually every guest this. I mean, you've talked about, making a handcrafted wine with an artisanal approach. Tell me a couple of things. Talk to me about vineyard practices and talk to me about cellar practices. And my eye is towards, sustainability, organics, or anything near to that. Sustainability is one thing. I mean, you could recycle your boxes. What you do with the soil is another thing. How do you approach that, with your vineyard partners? And then what's Peter doing in the cellar? Is he, lower intervention? Talk to me a little about that in your winemaking.
Yeah, I mean everything is really clean. We're sustainably, right there. It's not everything isn't certified, I would say,
Right.
but I mean everything we do is right on par of being like natural, organic,
Right.
and everything that we're doing. I mean it's super important for us. I mean obviously there's a lot of wine that's made, um, you know, in Napa, I would say there's a lot that's the same way, but outside of it, there could be other practices. I'm very fortunate, to have Peter, who's leading the charge in all this. And so he, it's funny, he sees all the natural wines and everything that's happening now.
Right.
And while we can't say we're exactly all natural wines, he said, everything that we're doing is super clean.
Right.
We're right there.
So
So all our practices. Yep.
when he's looking at vineyards, your contracts and
Exactly.
partners,
Yes.
he's looking for guys, with practices that haven't been killing, the land.
Yes.
What about, he's a savvy, experienced winemaker. What about in the cellar? I mean, a lot of Napa wines, and you and I could roll off 3-4 brands that, consistently taste similar year in, year out, where it's manipulated in the cellar. What are you guys doing in the cellar?
I mean, there's in the cellar, it all comes down to the grapes, right?
Right.
So it's not about manipulating it. It's letting, as long as you have the high quality fruit, you're letting them do sort of their thing, right?
Right.
So, it's pretty, once it gets to that point, it's all about the growing season and during the harvest. And then once from there, it's the same process that we always go through year after year. There's nothing
Right.
manipulating it. And we've been very fortunate. I mean, I lost 2020, right, with the fires.
Right.
2021 is a smaller
Wait, you
vintage.
particularly got hit because not
Yeah, I
everybody
mean,
did. So you have no
yeah,
2020 vintage?
I don't. No, we
Okay.
ended up
Sorry to hear that.
passing along on it just because there was taint. It wasn't, to be honest, it wouldn't have been noticeable, but we saw it in it. And we
I
just
know
said,
Schaefer did the same thing. You
yeah,
don't want to screw a reputation up by taking a
yeah.
chance,
I mean, the levels were, we just didn't appreciate, no, I don't think the consumer would have noticed, but like for us, we just didn't feel,
Good for
we
you.
just didn't feel it. It was better for us to pass on it. It sucks, but we understood what was happening. 20, the 21 vintage is great, high quality, small berries. It was a small harvest, but really concentrated. So we're excited about that. And our 19 that we had bottled last year is really great as well. And 19 is great because it was really a lot of good fruit, really elegant. It's
Right.
fun that you taste and you're like, wow, it could be released right now. But our
It was a
practice
good
is,
vintage year, right? 19?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it was. But our practice is to releasing later. Our 16 we're almost sold out of. We release later just because what we do is I want you to purchase a bottle of Magna Carta and know that you don't have to sit in your cellar for 2 years, right? Like you can open it up
Right.
and enjoy it. And that's why we do release later than other wineries.
So how much wine are you making approximately?
So we're doing currently about 650 cases each
Okay.
vintage,
And
and
where's most
so
of that going? Mailing list,
yeah,
retail,
yeah.
restaurants?
Yeah, so it's mostly mailing list, that we've built and restaurants. We did a little bit of retail, but it's
Right.
it's just
You don't
it's
need
very
to.
selective. Yeah,
Do you have any plans to add to the lineup, or you want to stay, with a singular left bank Bordeaux
we're talking
wine?
about it. So we're deciding upon if so we have some options right now for some Pinot, like a
Okay.
single vineyard Pinot. From Santa Lucia, that as well as Santa Rita Hills, and wanted to see if we're adding that to the Magna Carta line. But we do have Angel Falls
Let's
that has
talk
done
about
really
Angel
well.
Falls. So Angel
Yeah,
Falls is a different project in many ways, right?
yeah,
It's
exactly.
sort of an opportunity for you to spread your wings, no pun intended, angel wings, with more varietals and regions. Um, tell me Tell me how Angel Falls came about. I mean, is that because you have such a deep interest and love in wine and you're making one varietal? So you get, I'm going batshit and like, I got to do something else. How does that come about?
I think a lot of it was the different trips I've taken and just seeing the
Okay.
different areas and just knowing that, that there's a lot of great wine that could be made and that can, that's out there. Angel Falls came about, I think in like 2012.
Wow.
Uh, I think him, Peter Stoltman.
I
He
know Peter
actually,
well. We interviewed him at the end of last year.
yeah, him and his father. They're great, and Ruben and everybody, their whole team there. Peter went to
Let me ask you a
yeah,
question.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was out there and he gave me, I went up to the old man's house and they gave us a tour of the vineyards and everything. And there's so much going on there, Rhone varietals, their own stuff. I swear, who does Ruben work for? The Stoltmans?
I think so. I think
Because
he
I
works
think
for
he
the
said
Stoltman.
right here, this lot, this is our like Angel Falls project or something. I think, and it didn't mean anything to me. Then, when I started talking to you, I'm like, wait a second, this all ties together.
Yeah.
I think it may have been that. But yeah, I mean, when we talk about farming practices, organics, I mean, the
Oh,
Stoltmans are, very much, with that. All right. So I
they're
didn't
on
mean to
top of the game
interrupt.
of that. They're on
Yeah.
top of the game.
So the
But
first wines or the first wine was a Syrah?
it was a Syrah, and at that time I was drinking all sort of Northern Rhone style Syrahs at the time. I was on the sort of a kick on that, and
Is
I was
that
loved.
because you wanted to and you liked it, or it was
I loved it.
research or a little of both? You loved
No,
it.
no, no. I loved it at that time.
Right.
Everything I was drinking was like anything that was like Rhone, like I was really into, and I was also
I'm with you on that. But
and
just
also Tinsley. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
back up for
Colson
a
King. Yeah.
second. And how did you come to the Stoltmans?
So Peter ended up going to Georgetown University, which was down the street of the store.
Yes, he
So he
did.
knew about the store, and
Wow.
then he did a market visit, and he came by, and we sort of just hit it off, from there. And then, I talked to him, and I said, "Hey, like, love your Syrahs. Obviously we're doing well with them here. Is there any way? Do you have any extra grapes or anything that I could do a small little thing here and maybe just do an in-store, exclusive thing that I could
Right.
sell here?" And he said, yeah, let's, he's like, I think we did about like 85 cases. We did the Angel Falls Syrah, and we brought it in store. He had like a couple barrels left over, and that he was like, we can put it together with that. And we brought it in. I think we sold out of it in like 2-3 weeks. I was like, oh man, this is really something. So it was a really
Tell me
neat
this.
project.
Was the concept, was that the idea and the launch of Angel Falls, or the concept existed and that was the beginning of putting the pieces together?
That was really the beginning of putting the pieces together.
Okay.
I didn't really know about the winery aspect of what I was building. I was
Right.
still like really into retail, right? At that time. And so I didn't, but that opened my eyes to basically, oh, maybe, this, I can have my own, winery and build my own wines and take it out there. Because, people were appreciating it, they understood it. And, Angel Falls is always that. I think we were selling, it was like, Syrah was $20, at that
Right.
time.
The line
Um,
is very value
exactly.
oriented. Right.
Exactly. And we're trying to bring that everywhere. I mean, right now we do Angel Falls, we do a Sancerre. I met the Fournier family years back, and they've been instrumental in introducing me to some small vineyards out there that, and a winemaker that can help me produce, something from Sancerre, from Loire Valley. I don't
Right.
do a lot of cases Sancerre, but the terrain that we do out there is really awesome. And for like fifteen
So you're
dollars,
doing
it's really
Sancerre
cool.
Sauvignon Blanc. You did the Syrah. You're also doing Pinot and Chard.
We've done a Pinot. Some of the vineyards were that we were working with. There were larger vineyards, and for us, we weren't getting the same consistent quality from them. It wasn't contractual like a certain plot or a certain designated area. It was more done by like tons of grapes that they had,
Right.
and so some of the years that weren't as great down there and in that area just it didn't work out. It just wasn't consistent. And so, we're looking, but for me, it's about sort of like you said, the practices, but it's also about the consistency of what we're getting. The
Right.
quality can't dip, up and down. It's just not fair. I would
So,
say.
so based on that, what's reoccurring from Angel Falls? Syrah, the Sancerre or Sauvignon Blanc?
Yeah, Loire
Le-
Valley is definitely consistent.
the Loire and the Syrah are always going to be there. Or that's
Yeah,
the
Syrah
wheelhouse.
we've held off on the last couple of years. Peter's
Okay.
grown his program a ton, and so a lot. He's been he has a lot of new wines that he's brought out,
Right.
and so right now it would just be the Sauvignon Blanc that we've been working with from Terrain and Sancerre.
Okay. Good to know. Most of that wine is available where? Online?
Yeah, it's all
Retail?
at
Yeah.
Angel Falls. Yeah,
Okay.
just on our
And at
website.
the end of the show, we'll tell people where to go for Angel Falls and Magna Carta wines. Let's switch gears here. I want to get into a bunch of subjects that tie all together. You and I know there's historically been a certain snobbery and gatekeeping with wine. In doing the show during the pandemic, I mean, that whole thing blew up. I mean, a lot of people in the business wrote about it, documented, lived through it. I think, because I've always been into it, social media has done a good job democratizing wine, diversifying it, and demystifying it. I think you and I, me, because I'm older, we've seen social media go from just plain blogging to crazy posting, to influencer marketing, to video, TikTok, on so many platforms. Give me your take on the effects of social media and the effects it's having on, wine today.
Sure.
Because I think what you're seeing today is even different, than back in 2009 when you were at Pearson's and cutting your teeth.
Completely.
How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, back there in '09, the only way you would bring up the next generation of like wine enthusiasts would be in the retail store, right? Someone that you can trust that you would taste the wine or they would recommend a bottle, and that you would take it home and love it. If most of them weren't even then. I mean, some of them were if they really wanted to get into it, was reading what like Robert Parker,
Right. It was
Spectator, but those
very
were all
limited.
score based. Yeah, like
and they
it
were
wasn't
dominated by, a corporate magazine
big
or a
brands.
single guy. Right.
Exactly, big brands at that time, or whoever the marketing teams
Right.
were, or wineries. But it's changed now, where I think we're seeing the next generation drinkers really eager about learning wine, and they are coming to social media for that, right? So what I was able to do before was in the store, I was able to find out what you really liked, what you had tried before, what you're really into now, and then help sort of take those next steps, right? You enjoy this now, try this. Maybe it'll, open your palate for something else. But right
Right.
now we're getting it back in the community, where in the feedback, in the comments of people, right? And we're seeing that. A lot of sort of the demographic of sort of my community right now, they enjoy sweet red wines, right? And so
Like The Prisoner, residual sugar, blends, all that, right?
and maybe like yes, a lot of residual sugar, and
Right.
that's what they're enjoying now. And Prisoner, maybe there's a lot of fruit in Prisoner, right?
Yeah, no,
Some of
it's
these
not a bad example of what people want,
yeah,
but it's
and
got
so
residual sugar.
it does, and
Yeah.
that's what they're looking for, which is very interesting to me, right? Because I
Why?
was a lot of old world wine, right? Like not the residual sugar. It's
Right.
more like a lot of fruit. I would say, like I
Graphite,
enjoy.
pencil shaving, fruit, saddle,
Exactly.
all the nuances.
Exactly. So I'm learning as well. To be honest, I'm going back tasting a ton of wines that I'm tasting a ton of wines that I tasted 15 years ago, which is fun. But I'm tasting new wines that I never thought I would enjoy as well, right?
Right.
I've had Lambrusco before, but Lambrusco is coming up. Like it's interesting how many people, when I do sparklings, they say, and I'm recommending it now a lot more than I ever did before.
David, true or false? It's pretty damn good with pizza, right?
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's awesome.
So social media has opened up the market, to more people. It's become less dependent on those few, right? Um, but you made a good point because the people that are using it, they like certain type of wines. Um, do you think, that segment that pays attention to social media and wines on social media, do you think they're, intent on those residual sugar wines, or they want more? They want to know more about the story or the sustainable practices. I mean,
They
is
do.
social media
Yeah.
helping that?
Yeah, I think they want to learn all about it. So they would like to consume all of it. So it's not just about, the style of wine. It's the story
Right.
behind it, right? Who they want to invest in, right? And then it's also what are the practices, right? How are they producing this? Because that's a big thing, not just in wine, in everything now, in life,
So
right?
more scrutiny with that than, in previous, you know,
It
uh,
is.
generations or
It
whatever.
is, and I don't think, to be honest, I don't think the wine industry and the wineries have done a good job about this, right? Like even in marketing for the next generation of consumers, I don't think I think all wineries have been happy with what they have, and some of them have gone to the distributors who have grown their share, huge. But
Right.
really looking at it in a long-term lens, because a lot of these wineries exit out. So for me, it's a long-term lens of how I can build my winery for like a legacy down the line for my kids, right? Like, what does that look like, right? 20 years down the line.
Right.
And so it's like where are we going in the industry? Because it's changing, it's evolving. It's not exactly the same. Not everybody loves Bordeaux, anymore.
Right.
They don't want the big reds. They don't want all those tannins, in the wines,
Right.
which I grew up on. Like I thought tannins meant
Right.
good
That's how
wine.
you cut your teeth. So did I. I mean, I've moved away from, I still like it, but I've moved away from it.
Yeah, I
You
like
know,
softer tannins now as well.
Pinot Noir and Barolo,
Yeah,
those are
Burgundy is
some,
my thing. I gotta have
yeah, I
Burgundy
mean,
all the
those
time.
are some
Yeah,
interesting things.
exactly.
But, like I said, there's been a certain snobbery and gatekeeping, and it seems like Bordeaux and even most of Napa has done very little to kind of reach out to that market. Do you agree?
I do. I do. I definitely.
Where if you look at Burgundy, it's as snobby and as expensive or more than any of those, but more than even Napa and Bordeaux. I mean, the owners are like farmers. They're out in the field. They're crunchy, dirty guys that'll talk to you out on the farm, which, gives that a little more of a story, right?
Yeah, it does. It does, and it's really small, right? Like if you see, these estates and chateaus, they're tiny. The vineyards are tiny. Napa's sort of sprawling. And what you get to learn about Napa once you're in it. A lot of these guys, they're not really the farmers that Napa was based on. They've
No,
sort of exited out their tech company or this company, and now they gotta sort of plug some dollars into something, right? And I get it. Where else? Why would
and
you want to do it?
years ago, we call it the Parkerization, where he loved those big, unctuous, fruity wines, and that's all anybody was making. Thank God there's some people still making it, but a lot of people, changing up the styles. Um, let me let me ask you this before we take a break. Were you and how were you using social media before you really locked into TikTok? I mean, was that something you were using regularly and practicing, as
We were
best as you could, or
Yeah, we
go
were
ahead.
experimenting with it. We had done different longer form like YouTube type things, but what we learned was a lot of people in wine do the same thing, where it's a longer form, but you sort of lose interest in it, right?
Right.
Watching it. It's not as good
You
content, I
you
would say.
realize that? I mean, you as a consumer said, "Wait, this is either too long or too boring." I mean, was that evident to you?
Yeah, I was looking at it, and it wasn't as exciting to me watching it, and I was like, I love this stuff and I should be excited about it. It wasn't as good as a lot of the food content or, there's a lot of different things, right? That you can consume. And so for us, it was how do we make it exciting or make it entertaining for people to
Right.
actually watch it and gain value from it, obviously,
Right.
right? Well,
So
and so
we're,
how do we
we're
put that
gonna
together?
we're gonna get into that with TikTok, but tell me why I'm wasting an hour of people's time blathering with you when it should be a shorter interview. Just kidding.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's a
Yeah,
lot
no,
that we're bringing a ton of
no,
value.
I mean that podcast can be, short bursts of fun stuff, but the nice thing is you could really sit down with people like you and, get into some depth and people could take it, as it is. I could see the difference, with
Yeah, well,
Instagram stories or TikTok for sure.
oh yeah. I would say that this, like all the content of wine that I was seeing before, was really just wine reviews, right? Like, so you can only get so much of those.
Yeah. All right. Perfect time to take a break. We're talking to David Choi. David Choi is the proprietor of Magna Carta Cellars and Angel Falls Wines. He is also made some hay and some noise on TikTok, and when we come back from our break, we're going to get into that a little more. You're listening to The Grape Nation on the Heritage Radio Network.
Today's program was brought to you by Emmy Cheese, makers of specialty cheese from Switzerland, crafted with heart and passion. Since the early 1900s, Emmy has been a passionate supporter of farmers, cheesemakers, and family tradition. They believe in sustainable agriculture and respect for the people, land, and animals that make their business possible. Remaining dedicated to tradition, they strive to lead the industry in innovation, ensuring they bring you only the highest quality, best tasting cheese from Switzerland. Emmy is best known for importing more than 80% of Swiss Gruyere in the United States. But that's not to overshadow their other specialty cheeses, including Kaltbach cave-aged cheeses, Appenzeller, Tete de Moine, and traditional Emmentaler. For more information, visit emmyusa.com. That's EMMIUSA.com.
Okay, we're back. We're back with my guest, David Choi. David Choi is a winemaker, makes a Napa Bordeaux type wine called Magna Carta, and he's making at Angel Falls Sancerre, and he's made some Syrah and a few other wines. And what came to my attention on top of all of that was David found his way into TikTok, and wine is it's pretty well developed in a lot of social mediums. You see everybody posting wine bottles and parties. You see blogging, all the stuff that I talked about. But David, you got into TikTok. Let's talk about that. I mean, you may have mentioned it. I mean, the Astor wine story may be the answer, but what attracted you specifically to the medium? And ultimately, why do you put most of your energy there versus other platforms?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy it. It just seemed, I think where we were in the space of social media platforms, I think it was the right time. I wouldn't say I was, I was one of the probably early influencers in the space, but like, there were other people already doing it. I think at that time, Instagram had sort of matured and it was just different. It wasn't bringing the value I thought,
Right.
the same thing that TikTok was doing, and gave me the
Right. It was the
platform to,
next better thing.
yeah. And it was, something that you had to be on the fly for about 20 seconds, which really hit at that time, gather, bring all your value, but, pull it all together basically in 20 seconds is the way I looked at it. Right.
Right.
And to be able to deliver. And so, yeah, I mean, it
Wait,
was,
when you say that, you're saying deliver your message on the
yeah,
platform in 20 seconds?
yeah,
So
exactly.
and we'll get into it, but your presentation on TikTok is, very fast burst, get to the point with very specific information quickly, right?
Yep. That's what the way we were looking at. I think it was, 20,
And,
25 seconds,
and
right? Is those
TikTok
two.
is, better than stories or YouTube, obviously, right?
Yeah, I mean, the way that we saw it, and obviously we tested it out, and we shared it along. Once, once we saw what we saw was correlation once it hit from TikTok, and then once we put it on like an Instagram Reels, it did well.
Right.
It's just two different communities. We thought, and the way that we saw it.
I agree, and I want to get into the communities, but answer this for me and tell me the truth here. I'm looking in your eyes, and I could tell if you're telling me the truth or not. How much of a user of TikTok were you before you really jumped into this?
I was on it.
You were
I was, yes. I mean, I was following a lot of people. Um, I
wine
was
people or just in general?
a lot more in the food space, I would say. I was
Okay.
watching a lot more food and a lot of
Big
the
food
trends.
space.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like I wasn't following as much wine because I'm in it myself. And I was seeing some people what they were doing, but I like watching other industries on how they sort of market what they do.
Right.
And so I look at that and I said, what can I do with that in wine? And so that's early on we were really active on every platform. Just seeing what's going on.
Right. The right formula is the right formula, whether it's food or wine. Um, who do you see as the core audience of TikTok, and who do you see is that your audience? I mean, TikTok, and this is kind of a contrived leading question, but the perception of TikTok is it's very young. Um, I mean, who do you see as that audience, and is that, working for you? A lot of their audience isn't even legal to buy or drink wine.
Yeah, I mean, for me, sort of the community that I have is about 25 to 30, I would say. Like, but actually, I would say it's about 21 to 30 or 21 to 28, 29. What we have found, we do well on it just because of the variety of wines we taste on and different price ranges, right? We try to do stuff that are in the value price point, and tasting different things that we know that compare, with different foods that they would try today, like hot Cheetos and different things like that, right?
Right.
The Riesling and hot Cheetos thing is like, this
So
hot and
content,
sour. Hmm.
content like anything.
Yeah.
I've watched, virtually every TikTok, and the audience has been anywhere from a little under 10,000 to, I think that Drake thing was 500,000 or whatever. And then when you look at the wine presentations, the audience varies. I mean, I could put every famous big Napa and Bordeaux guy on this show and get the audience, but that's not what this is about. You sort of have a not what's right policy, but what works philosophy on TikTok, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're always
So
trying out
explain how you
new things.
choose topics and how you go about.
Yeah, I mean, we try it out by looking at everything as a series. One of the best series that we do is if you love, and we put three fruits together. If you love strawberries, cherries, and blueberries, right? And
Right.
we would say your wine is. And so, that series just puts things that people love, right, already, and then puts it in context with wine, right?
You make it
And
relatable.
yeah, and so it puts it together where they didn't think about that before, right?
Right.
And they would come back to me and say, we love oranges or we love green apples, right? What would my wine be? And we draw that just so we can attract them into wine, right? If they're not a wine fan now, but something that we can get them to learn, bring some value to them while getting something new. Wine. What we also found was most people don't thoroughly enjoy wine till they're about 28 years old. That's when the level of wine like experiences really grows.
Is that
For
because they
people.
don't get it, or it's not what they expected? What do you think it is?
I don't know. I think it's like how wine is perceived, right? Like
I
wine
guess,
isn't
yeah.
like tequila or vodka, where it's like we go out to the bar or to the club, and we drink wine. You don't, most people don't. It's
Right.
like you get older and you're like, oh, we're going with a night out to dinner, right? And we're going to enjoy some wine. So I think, that level sort of changes of age as they get older. And so for us, what we said, and I've spoke to, the people around me, I said, it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be like, oh, yeah, I'm older now. Now I can drink
Right.
wine. It's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
because like think about it. In the old world, you go to Italy or France, they have it on the table. You're sipping on it when you're young, starting
Right.
very young,
It's cult.
right?
It's
It's a
part of
part
your
of life.
life and culture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
part of the life and it's part of the culture, like you said, and the lifestyle. And so there's no reason that it shouldn't be done here. But wine is just perceived like, you have a pothic or something, right? Like you just, they just throw it
You
out
hate
like it's like,
apothic, right? I wouldn't use the
uh,
word hate. Apothic doesn't stand for what you're trying to do.
it doesn't, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of people. We've done some apothic stuff, and there's a lot of people that enjoy it. And
Right.
so,
You can't
they
deny that.
they've done a great job in what
Right.
they have done, right?
Right.
But it's not my cup of tea, right? It's not the wine that I go and purchase. But it's
And you're not afraid to talk about that. I mean, I think you're doing, at least a handful of things. You're definitely doing pairings. You alluded to Riesling and Cheetos, and there are other pairing things. You're doing picks. If you like Chardonnay and you're very specific about, um, specific brands. And I think you're trying to show the consumer value. I mean, those are the things you concentrate on, right?
yeah. I mean, it's really important to bring the value, um, you know, and I think we're evolving as well, right?
Of course.
And I think that a lot of what we did was, within the community, it's what they wanted, right? But they knew a lot of the bigger brands, right? Like
Right.
these machines, but they don't know a lot of the small vineyards, that produce the same amount of quality,
So
and different regions.
how do you go about that? Just because of your many years in retail and your understanding of making wine, you feel you can scour the market and bring these wine suggestions to people without any real agenda other than value to the consumer. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I also want them to learn about other regions that they wouldn't normally think about as well, right? And know that there is great wine being produced there. The background of a lot of the wines that I taste are from a lot of it are from the days of, yeah, when I was in the retail store. And
Right.
and a lot of those wines are still consistent even though I haven't had them in, you know, 5, 6 years, 7 years, or a decade. They're still
Right.
consistent today, which has been phenomenal, which is great because it also means that I was doing a great service at that time,
Right.
knowing and choosing these wines, right? And now it's still really consistent, good, brings all that value even now. And so it's been fun. It's been fun to do. It's been a
Did
lot
you
of wine
Did
drinking.
you did you find a sweet spot? Like, you've done a lot of this and, you've delved into and recommended a lot of wines. Is there a sweet spot that if you go below a certain point, you're just not going to find the quality to the value? And if you spend too much, it's not worth it? I mean, do a lot of these wines fall into a range or not necessarily?
No, I wouldn't say necessarily. I don't think I look at wines as a like just in a price range category
Okay.
like base
That's
because
fair.
it's different
That
depending on
boxes
what
it in
region
too
you
much.
yeah, it depends on what region you're getting it from, right? Like I mean, and like, the producer. So I think just basing it on price points would be it just wouldn't be
Right.
something, it
Because
wouldn't be correct. Yeah.
there's value in champagne, but it's not going to be as cheap as,
Yeah.
New Zealand, Sauvignon Blanc. Um, how frequently do you post?
We're posting probably every day. We took a little bit of break during the holidays just to
Did you
sort of
ramp
get
up to
ourselves.
every day or you hit the ground running near every day?
We've been shooting almost daily, I would say, and putting together content and getting it out daily.
Right. Um, I mentioned to you off air, I want you to do our wine list, and I, coaxed you to get me some wine so that we could taste and talk about it. So I want to leave time for that. Um, help me with this. We know the beauty of social media is that the point of entry is not difficult. I mean, it's like turning on an app, and the cost, could and is minimal. Um, you're, down the road a little bit on this. Give my listeners some advice how, they could make social media or even like a TikTok work for them. What are the tenets of what you're doing, that make it successful?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. You can't ever make it perfect. You just got to sort of go out and just
Don't
do it.
fixate on that
Yeah,
perfection, right?
especially if it's of something of real interest to you and you have a passion for it, right? And you
Okay.
want to have sort of a voice and, meaning that you want to, there's something that you can deliver a message of value to somebody. But it doesn't have to be perfect. But you do have to be consistent, I would say. Like, and you
And how
can't
do you define consistent?
just keep.
Messaging, posting?
Yeah, both. Delivering a message of value to someone, but also consistently delivering it, right? And even
Right.
if your first 10, 20, 30 posts really don't gather a following, you just got to stick with it. I mean, it takes a while to build it up, right? Um,
Patience.
yeah, I mean, there's an algorithm that plays into all of this as well, right? That
Right.
nobody knows about. And so it's really just if it's something you love, you just do it,
You don't
So.
mind doing it.
Nope, not at all. Yeah.
What else? Anything else you could think of? That you attribute this, you know, doing a good job?
Uh, for me, it's really about looking at the community in the comments, right? And really getting back to them on what they want. Obviously, there's things
So
that
staying connected.
yeah, exactly. I mean, because there's obviously the wines that I would want to see probably aren't necessarily the wines that we shoot our content with all the time, right?
Right.
But it's what is needed, I would say. Like people have questions and they want somebody to help them,
Right.
and so you want to be there for them and and answer those questions as best as possible.
So are you saying that the agenda can be made by what the audience it wants to hear or yearning for or wants to see? It may push you away from what you're thinking because it's
Yeah,
important what they want. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, the community is super important,
So
right? Like their
don't
voice.
ignore the community.
Yeah, their voice. I mean, that's what you're doing this for, right?
Yep.
Like you're trying to bring value to other people that are super interested in what you're doing or the industry that you're in, and you're trying to help them understand, right? It's sort of what we're doing in wine. It's like the next generation of wine. We're trying to help them understand wine because a lot of them
Right.
just don't understand it. So how can
Right.
we do that? Sometimes for us, we have to simplify what I know about wine into a way that they understand, right? And so you get that, and then you can help elevate them to where sort of we are in our experiences of wine, right? But you can't do that until you understand where they're coming from, right?
That's
So
yep. I
so
agree.
that's
I
where it's
mean
super important.
that's great advice. And you mentioned earlier, I mean, a lot of your TikTok segments are 20 seconds. So you got to be able to get that message out and make the point to those people and react to what they want. All right, David, we do a thing called the wine list. We ask every guest every week the same 5 questions. I'm not letting you out of here without the 5 questions. Same questions to everyone. First question is, what's David drinking now? What's in his fridge? What's he experimenting with? Do the seasons change what you're drinking? Give me a few things, you're drinking.
All right. I always have small grower champagne in the fridge, and generally, so I appreciate Andre Clouet. I don't know.
Spell Clouet for me.
Clouet. He's
Okay.
from, he's someone that I met a while back,
He's
and
a fave too. You like him?
yeah,
Okay, that's a
I
good
love
one.
his, and it's really dude, his champagne is like $35 for small grower
So it's
champagne.
great quality, great value. Those
Yeah.
are the answers I'm looking. Give me one more thing you're drinking now.
The other one is, right now it's I love Volnay from Burgundy. It's a little bit higher in the
Okay.
price point, but that's one that I
We're
enjoy.
not
And
talking price point.
okay, and Barolo. Right now, like food wine, Barolo right now is sort of
I'm with you
like
on
in my
both of
thing.
those.
So
I think for Burgundy, Volnay's interesting, and I've been drinking Barolo forever. I'm kind of finding my footing that I may even like Barbaresco more, but I'm not sure yet.
Yeah,
Um,
I've been coming back to Italian wines. So I've been off it, right? It's like a cycle thing for me. It's like I'm off it for a while and then I come back. Burgundy is always something that I always have to have in Champagne as well. But
yeah,
Barolo. So
I agree with you on all of that. And it's funny because you cut your teeth in Bordeaux and you make a Bordeaux style wine and it's not on the list. That's okay. All right, we're moving
I'm
on.
tasting a ton of,
No, no,
it's
no,
funny
no,
because I'm
no.
tasting a ton of it all the time. So,
I'm not letting you answer that question anymore. We're on to the next one. Favorite wine and food pairing. Goofiest question, not something you eat every night, not something you even eat every month. Not what you think is a good wine and food pairing, but what's your favorite wine and food pairing?
ooh, okay. I would say one of the more recent ones I shot with content, and I was super surprised about it, was like we did fried chicken, creme fraiche, and caviar. And I did it with a cava. And the one bite I had was just absolutely extraordinary. Like I was like,
So
wow.
I got to agree with you on that because a lot of answers I get is fried foods, mostly fried chicken and champagne. Cava is a sparkling wine.
Yep.
I think that's great because the sparkler is great with caviar and the fried food. That's a good one. You took the bold leap away from champagne and said caviar. I love you for that. All right. Do you have a favorite wine restaurant and or bar? Now you can give me DC, you can give me out west. If you mention people, you're not leaving people out. It's just a few things that come to mind. Can you think of
Mhm.
anything? Now this is where you walk in and the list is great, the vibe is great, the people are knowledgeable, you feel good. Anything fall under that category?
Yeah, I mean, every time, whenever it's press for me in St.
Okay,
Helena
in
and Napa.
Napa. Awesome
Yeah,
wine list.
the list is great. They have a great by the glass program, meaning a
That
lot of
that you
older
know that checks all
wines.
the boxes.
Yeah, and the food's great, of course.
Anything like that in DC?
I haven't been out as much in DC, to be honest, lately.
Okay.
I've been out on the West Coast a ton. I just got back in and really haven't really been able to get out as much lately. But I'm interested to see what's going on because it's been a couple of years.
Okay.
So it's
So
I'm guessing the
press,
landscape has changed.
yeah, press is a good answer. All right, fourth question. Favorite all-time wine. Redundancy is one of my great attributes.
Ooh,
I initially asked this question, to find out what's the rarest, most expensive wine you ever drank. We don't care about that anymore. What's that wine that had the most influence on you, was special, maybe was a gateway? I have a feeling it may be a Bordeaux or something, but there has to be a wine, that was just important to you. Can you recall,
yeah.
a wine or two?
Yeah, it's one that when you say that comes to mind, and it's I do a left bank, right,
Right.
Bordeaux, but it's a right bank that Cheval Blanc,
Really?
yeah, Cheval Blanc,
Cheval Blanc.
yeah,
Wow, look at you. Um, crazy.
yeah. I
That's a
mean,
good
it's
one.
just the most memorable. I mean, it's the first. I think it's like it was the first Bordeaux, older Bordeaux that I had that I was like, wow. I think I've had a lot of Bordeaux where it was over their time, right? It was really downhill, and like, but this one was still very vibrant for the age, and
Do you
it was
remember
just
the vintage year?
I don't. It was in the '80s though. It was in
Okay,
the
so
'80s.
it was definitely the vintage year was an 80s.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
but it was
All
still
right.
very vibrant, and it was great. And then
Yeah, well
years
that's
later, I was
it's
able
young.
to actually have dinner inside their like tank room at the
Oh,
chateau and
nice.
stuff. So like it just doubled up for me there.
Yeah. That's the way you answer that question. All right, last question. And I don't know if any guest I've ever had can answer this question better than you. Um, you probably are the number one guy who can give the best answer to this question. I don't want to create any pressure, but the spotlight's on you now. All right. So here's the question. And we talked about this a little about price not being, sort of a measure, but we're coming back to that on this. Recommend to me the best wine around 15, 20, 22 bucks. Recommend a red, recommend a white. You could go category, like you could just say Muscadet, which could be a good value. Sauvignon Blanc's a good value. You can give me makers. You can give me regions. We know
Sure.
the Loire has some values. What do you think about when you think about that, range, think of a white, think of a red.
Yeah. For a white, I think terrains are great. For
Okay.
me, just if you get a good, around 15, $17, the complexity in it's great. And you get
Can you
some
think of
notes
a
of,
maker? Does a maker come to mind?
I don't know. I've tasted a lot of them, and
All
they're
right,
really
but
small.
terrain, the area. That's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, because like I think even if you're in New Zealand, Sauvignon Blanc drinker, there's terrains that actually have like notes of New Zealand style, even though like there's a lot of flinty style as well. But like, I think it hits a lot of different Sauvignon Blanc drinkers. For a red, it's actually one that I tasted the other day. I was super surprised. It was
What was it?
a it was a 2019 Decoy Limited Cabernet
Really?
from Napa Valley. Yeah, I'm not a very big Decoy fan at all.
That's the
Uh,
Duckhorn people?
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's their blue label that they had, and it was $24. I tried it, and really for $24 for a Napa, like it was soft and elegant on the tens. It wasn't like over the top. So it was like something that I really enjoyed with the fruits on it, and was really surprised. I think that more so than anything else.
That's a good example because we know what Napa wines cost, and for you who's tasted a lot of wines at different levels, to recommend that.
Yeah, because I've seen a
Um,
lot of $20 Napa cab wines that were trash, right? Like, I
yeah,
mean, and not all of
yeah,
them,
no
but
doubt.
like the
That's a
ones I've
tough
tasted.
price range for
Yeah,
Napa.
yeah,
All right, I didn't tell everyone, but we post all our guests' answers on our social media sites, which leads us to our next and last segment, and that's our weekly wine sip. Every week we taste a different wine on air. When I have a winemaker, I try to invite them on to bring some of their wines. So, David, this week we're tasting. You were kind enough to send me at the last minute your wheelhouse wine, which is the 2016 Magna Carta. That's your singular cab blend, left bank inspired. Tell me a little more about this wine and vintage.
yeah. It's 70% cab, 20% Merlot, 5% Cab Franc, and 2.5% each of Malbec and Petit Verdot, right?
That's a real
Uh,
Bordeaux blend, man.
yeah. It predominantly comes, all the cab comes from Oakville. The Merlot we get from Carneros. Same thing with the Cab Franc, and Stag's Leap, and actually the Petit Verdot is from Howell Mountain. So that's where it breaks down. It's we use 60% new French oak on it. It's great. We think we just released it, I guess, like last fall. It's been great. The reaction's been great. We've been very
Let
fortunate
me
to
ask you a
have a lot of.
question.
Yep.
Um, how many vintages of Magna Carta have you made?
We have made a total currently of, was it six, five?
And you broke down the
Yep.
blend mix with me. How much does that vary? Do you stick pretty close to what you told
Yeah.
me, or it depends on the vintage?
No. We're right about it. It's usually about
Heavy
six.
cab, next Merlot, and then you'll,
Yeah.
slot
Sometimes
it
we
in.
don't have any Malbec, but most of the times we've the last few vintages has all been Malbec. The 14 no Malbec in it. But yeah, the
Right.
percentages of cab are always they're always very close.
All right. So let's, while we're together and I have it in front of me, let's give it a sniff and throw it over the tongue and let's talk about it. But first, color. It's kind of a, deep dark purple, nice dark edges, right?
Yep.
You tell me, stick your schnoz in there. What are we getting on the nose with this particular vintage?
Sure. Cassis, right? You always get a lot of
Okay,
red cassis.
very typical Napa
Yep.
descriptor. What else?
Dark cherry fruits, I would say.
Very
Just
dark
really
fruits.
nice. Yeah, just very nice. I would say it's a good mix of the red and dark fruits that you would expect from Napa.
Okay, the red. Not that it's a bright wine, but the red gives it, some of that, brightness on the dark fruits. All right, let's throw it over the tongue. Mouth feel. Let's talk about that.
Hmm.
I get it as pretty full bodied, medium plus or more. I wouldn't use the word unctuous, which, in a sense sometimes is too much, but it's got
Yeah,
a nice mouth filling feel.
yeah,
What do you say?
yeah. I get, you know. nice mild tannins on it, right? Like,
Yes,
soft feeling.
mild
Um,
integrated.
yeah. And I really, for me, for what that is, I like it because it's versatile with food,
All right,
and
before
so
we
I
get
really
to
love that.
food, palate.
Mhm.
You throw it over the tongue again. Do the nose descriptors, are they replicated on the palate, or do you pick up other stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I get the red fruits, but I also get like plum, right?
Hmm.
Nice plum on there, some
A darker
raspberry.
fruit.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Um, Napa's been accused for making these over the top, unctuous, cough syrupy type wines. I mean, I know you wanted to make a left Bordeaux wine. You feel you accomplished that? I mean, is this the level and presentation, that you were looking for?
I think what we are doing is a good representation of, left bank Bordeaux. I wouldn't say it is, uh, you know, um,
A restrained.
yeah, and it's
Yeah,
not what it is. It's
it's
not an
not
over
over
the
the
top.
top.
No, it's not
Right.
an over the top Napa, and that's not anything we would ever, that's just not our style, I would say,
Right. And it is the
of what we're
style of
producing.
many wines out there. I agree with you on that. It's big, but it's not, too much. Now let's get to pairing. Give me the ideal pairings in your mind for this particular wine and vintage.
Obviously, steaks are always one.
Yes.
And I always
Juicy burger.
juicy burger, and I'll bring one up. I like sushi. I like sashimi with it, right? Like a red tuna, something like
I
that.
agree. I agree. I think tuna, I even think some, salmon that has some body. I think it's fine.
Yeah, and
Maybe
that
not with hamachi or yellowtail, but who cares, right? I mean, that's what your
no, you could try
TikToks
it
are
out.
about too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you could try it out. I mean, this is the one thing I've learned is like everybody has their own palate, right? So, their
right.
taste, everyone's tastes are going to be different. And which is so funny because back in the day, everybody's palates were supposed to be programmed to be the same, whatever Parker said or like these publications said. And now it's like, it doesn't matter.
Well,
Everybody, you enjoy what
I
you
said
enjoy.
it earlier. I said your approach, and you're reconfirming that it's not what's right. It's not what they said or they did. It's what works,
Just try it,
right? So
right?
if
Yeah.
if you got a nice piece of fatty Toro, I mean, this will knock that
Yeah.
down pretty nicely. All right,
Yeah.
so that's the 2016 Magna Carta proprietary red from Napa. David talked about some of the vineyards, people who make it, and all of that. Is it still available?
It is. Yep.
And best place to get it?
MagnaCartaCellars.com on the
Okay,
website.
go direct there. All right, David, we got to wrap up. I told you to go quickly. We're way over an hour. Let me do a quick wrap up, and I want to get some info from you. So if you have a question, suggestion, wine happening, or event, hit me up at sam@thegrapenation.com. That's sam@thegrapenation.com. Subscribe to the Grape Nation podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your pods. I don't want to say I'm begging you to subscribe, but if you just hit the subscribe button, the podcast is going to be there after every new one, comes out, and you're all set up. So, please subscribe to the podcast. You can reach us on Instagram at SBenRuby, on Twitter at BenRuby, but you could always use the hashtag the Grape Nation to get to us. I don't know if I said you could follow us on Facebook at the Grape Nation. As I mentioned, we'll post David's wine list and our weekly wine sip selection on our social media sites. David, let's go through this one more time. If we want to follow you on TikTok, what do we do?
You can follow me on Wine with David.
Okay. So to get David on TikTok, he's Wine with David. If you want to follow him on other mediums like Instagram, Wine with David too, right?
Yep, that's the same with IG. Yep.
Okay. And then let's just do the wines one more time. Magna Carta is what? How do we get it online?
Oh, it's at Magna Carta Cellars.
Sellers. Okay. And
Yep.
then Angel Falls.
It'd be under it's at angelfallswines.com.
Okay. And that's how you can get to all of that.
Yep.
David's doing some fun stuff on TikTok, so check that out. I mean, that's what attracted me to David. I mean, David's a young guy, and it's a pretty big accomplishment, getting 2 wineries going, picking up from Washington and moving out west. But the TikTok thing, like I said, caught my attention, and it's fun. So check that out. I want to thank our guest, David Choi. I want to thank our engineer, Kevin, and everyone at the Heritage Radio Network. I'm Sam Ben Ruby, and you've been listening to The Grape Nation. The Grape Nation is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. For our freshest content, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at heritage_radio. You can also find us at facebook.com/Heritage Radio Network. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners like you. Want to be part of the food world's most innovative community? Subscribe to the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join the HRN family by becoming a member. Just click on the beating heart at the top right of our homepage. And thanks for listening.